All right, welcome everyone. I'm going to go over something that is going to be useful for everyone. And the reason why is I was always continue from typography, but before we continue with typography, I want to go a little bit into design movements. All right. And the reason why design movements is an important thing for you to understand is because sometimes you might be trying to find something, right? And you know what you're trying to look for, but you don't know what it's called, so you don't even know what to find, or you don't know what to search for. All right. So design movements, understanding the design movements is going to help you know, what different styles look like, right? And how you can design with different styles. Also, because some genres like of business, let me just say genres of business, some different types of businesses might require different fields. So if you are designing for maybe a classical orchestra, for example, right? And maybe they want something that looks very classical, right? So apart from using colors that are classical inclined, using fonts that are traditional, like serif fonts and all of that on script fonts, there are many other elements that you want to pay attention to that are similar or that are synonymous to a particular style. All right. So I'm going to share my screen now. And once we're done, we're going to continue from typography, and then we will proceed from there. All right. Are we good? All right. So design styles. All right. Now, I want you to pay attention to many of the things that I'm going to say here because they'll be useful for you. Okay. We're going to start with design movements. All right. And let me explain what a style is. Basically a way or a method of doing something, right? So some styles are developed from movements, right? So movements are more historical, right? So there's in history, there's Baroque, there's Renaissance, there's Greek, Greek, Roman, all those different times in history, sorry, had their different art movements, all right. And then there were different elements, icons, styles of design or aesthetics that were synonymous with those styles that I want you to pay attention to at this point. All right. So as we focus on them, you're going to start to see some things that you can notice in modern design and where they came from. All right. So let's move as quickly as possible. I'm going to start with Art Nouveau. And the key characteristics feature of this style are the bold outlines and flat yet intricately hand illustrated designs and typefaces. All right. And it's obviously very whimsical, romantic, and highly technical. So if you look closely, you see that there are a lot of details, right? Not that we're going to have to replicate something like this on Canva, but of course, if you're going to work with something that has an Art Nouveau style, then you know that you're going to work with this style of design, even if you're not going to illustrate it exactly this way. So you know that you're not going to have geometric type of texts, for example, right? Because this style is more illustrative, right? And many of the fonts are heavy and weighted outlines, all right? So, and if you notice also, you see that the elements look very hand-drawn. The elements look hand-drawn, even the text, the fonts, the colors, everything, they look really, really hand-drawn. And obviously, because at the time when this style was in vogue, we didn't have digital painting and stuff. So, but people still draw inspiration from these styles to work with different types of designs, even in today's world. All right. So they use a lot of natural forms, they use a lot of natural color and tonal palettes, and then they usually regularly feature female personas. Okay. And those are the major characteristics of this Art Nouveau style. All right. When you see some movie posters, for example, right, if they're trying to refer to something that was around the time when this style was in vogue, they will most likely do their designs in this style because they want you to relate the style with the theme of the movie, or maybe a music event or an exhibition or anything of the sort. Yeah. So the style is called Art Nouveau. All right. Next is Victorian style, right? They look very similar, obviously, but there are certain differences that you can start to see already. The Victorians loved complex and ornate objects, and this influence filtered through all areas of their design, including the architecture, furniture, interior, fashion, typography, and their commercial arts. Right. And one thing that you would notice very easily is they have a lot of borders compared to this. You don't see the borders as much as you see them here. Right. And not just borders, but heavily decorated borders, like heavily ornamented borders. So you would have heavily ornamented borders as part of some of their very popular style. There's also a lot of symmetry as well, right? And another thing that you can see is they have few straight lines or edges, right? Compared to Art Nouveau, right, you hardly see any straight lines, right? You'd hardly see any straight lines, but here we start to see more of straight lines, okay? Even though their colors seem similar, right? The kind of colors that they use seem similar, and there's also a lot of illustrations as well. But this time we're seeing more ornate and busy imagery. So ornate in the sense that you're seeing curves, you're seeing all of these different ornate items and elements. All right. Now, let me just pause a little and help you see how this will be useful for you in whatever you're doing. So let me create a new object. Let's say that I'm working on something that has a Victorian style. All right. And I want to search through my elements. Okay. And I just type Victorian. Now, you see the kind of things that you start to see. They are similar to that style of design. Like I said, you might be looking for this kind of heavily ornamented shapes, but you probably not know what to search for, right? So just to give you a good idea of when you understand the design movement, you have an idea what they look like, you know how to, link them up with the kind of things that you're looking for on Canva, all right? So my internet is unstable. Okay, so it's back up now. All right. So you can see the kind of things that we're seeing here, right? Heavily ornamented frames, edges, colors, even images, right? I mean, this is a modern image, but you can see like they have Victorian style patterns in the images. Okay. So just to let you know how applicable this can be when you're working as a designer, whether with Canva or any other tool. All right. Now, next is arts and crafts. All right. Arts and crafts, it stood for a traditional craftsmanship using simple forms and often featured medieval, romantic, or folk style of decoration with heavy use of textures and illustrated initials. All right. And you can easily tell that they reused a lot of traditional and older style features like their type of illustration, right? And you can also see here that they're not too different, but quite differently from the Victorian style. In arts and crafts, every single text is actually illustrated, right? So you don't see them use stencil types of text, okay? And you have a lot of textures, right? And they had simpler forms in the sense that they're not as complex as the things that you have in Victorian style or even in Art Nouveau. Okay, so that's basically arts and crafts. So if you go on Canva, obviously you'll find things that are similar to you'll find things that have this style if this is what you're looking for. All right. Next, Art Deco. And you can easily see the departure from the Victorian, Art Nouveau, and art and craft style in Art Deco, right? Very easily. Can you just tell me some of the things that are obvious? I want you guys to say something. Okay. Can you see my Sorry about the break in transmission. I'm going to continue from where I stopped. So I was discussing at the point when we stopped, we're on Art Nouveau, Art Deco. All right, I was saying sorry for the break in transmission. When I stopped, we were at Art Nouveau, Art Deco, sorry. So I'm just going to share my screen and we'll continue from there. Trying to find. Right. Okay, can you see my screen now? You can unmute yourselves and let me know. I'm going to be having a minor interactive session with you guys. All right. Can you all hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right. So yes, I was referring to Art Deco, which is where we are now, and I was trying to, point out. Can you let me know some of the obvious differences that you can easily see between, Art Deco and some of the ones that we'd seen previously, namely art and craft, Victorian style, and then Art Nouveau? Anybody?
I think Art Deco is like less stuffy, so there are less details, and also it's more modern.
Nice. It's more modern. And how do we define what is more modern in terms of like, modern is a word that we can use to describe things that are, but what exactly characterizes something that we will call modern in terms of like the physical forms that you can see, the types of fonts, stuff like that?
I'm tempted to say like the pictures, the characters used, also the buildings, they represent more modern like architecture, but I don't know if it's just that picture. Also the font is definitely more modern. Yeah, I think.
Okay. So one last thing, right? I want you to describe how different it is without using the word modern.
Okay, it's more colorful, vibrant, um, less stuffy, I think.
Okay, cool. Any other person? Thank you.
It looks more lively.
More lively. How do you define lively? I want you to try to be as
Colors.
bright colors. Yeah. I want you to pay attention to some of the things that are characteristic of a physical form. So for example, instead of saying it looks more lively, I want you to say something like we can see more warm colors, right? Instead of saying something like they are using more modern fonts, you can say stuff like the fonts are more geometric than hand illustrated, stuff like that. So remember, that's one of the reasons why I taught us the art terms and terminology, so that we can also use them in describing how physical forms differ, and instead of using more generalistic language that a regular person would use, right? Let me know if you understood what I just explained.
Yeah, it was clear.
All right. So I want you to pay attention to that, because as we go on to other different styles, I would ask again, and I want you to be able to use, those words, those terms to make clear differences. All right. So here we can see, and the answers on the screen, so feel free to look at that, right? The characteristics synonymous with this graphic style are bold curves, strong vertical lines, capitalized type or text, and then can you see my screen? Sorry about that. Hello? Can anyone reply me? Let me know if you can see my screen. Is anybody there?
I can see your screen.
Okay, cool. Thanks. All right. So I was explaining the Art Deco, right? We can see this graphic design style has a lot of bold curves, right? Strong vertical lines, capitalized text or type, rich contrasting colors. Look at the yellow and the very, very navy blue, right? So you can see the contrast in the color makes it pop very well, right? And then we can also see a lot of aerodynamic forms, airbrushing, motion lines, you see, and then geometric treatment of patterns on surfaces, right? And it's practically flat in terms of depth, right? It doesn't look as three-dimensional as some other types of design styles in terms of, not in terms of what is being illustrated, in terms of the nature of the design itself, right? So, and it's flat because you can see here that this text is obviously flat. It doesn't have any three-dimensional features on it, right? Compared to some other styles that I'll refer to later in the course, okay? So next we have American kitsch, all right? And I mean, this design style is synonymous with informal shapes, rich and high contrasting color use. Obviously here we have a lot of more hand-drawn and colored illustrations, space age forms and dramatic curves. I want this image to load properly so that you can see it clearly. It's supposed to be clearer than this. Hold on, let me reload my page. So at American kitsch, and when it loads properly, you see obviously very similar to Art Deco in the sense that we have contrasting imagery and fonts, right? And here the illustrations are more cartoonish compared to the previous ones that we had seen. Bold and vibrant colors very easily, right? And then we see people in very dramatic poses, as opposed to something like Art Nouveau, where they look more relaxed. You can see here, like the poses are more dramatic, okay? And then we have aerodynamic shapes. And you can also see how very surreal the proportions are, in the sense that you can see a woman literally larger in scale compared to a full bridge, right? So you can see the distortion of scale in the sense that, you know, big things are looking small, small things are looking big, and there's some form of cohesion, obviously, right? But you can see that for them to have gotten this, they had to, you know, play around with the scale for them to achieve this, all right? Futurism, now you can tell that futurism is very, very, very different from the previous ones that we had discussed. So I want to open the floor. Let me know, speak to me. What obvious differences can you see in futurism compared to all the previous ones that we had seen before, especially Art Deco and American kitsch? Anybody?
I think it has a lot of geometric shapes.
Yeah, very, very true.
And it uses serif fonts. I know the middle image has some sub-serif qualities.
Yeah.
I think majorly it uses
serif fonts. Sans serif, sorry.
Yeah.
Cool, true. Any other thing let me give you some pointers. You can also look at the kind of shapes, the colors. Any
They
other
use
person?
very dull,
Come again.
dull colors are more prominent here.
Okay. Well, more specifically, actually, there's more monochromatic colors, right? You know, the difference between dull colors and monochromatic colors would have been dull colors have a wider spectrum of hue. So you would have like dark blue, dark green, green, blue, and all those dull colors. But here we don't even have those colors. What we have here typically is white, gray, black, or cream to black, or brown to black, right? So more monochromatic. Any other characters? Feel free to actually read from my screen. I'm not hiding it.
Yeah, I think that I would like to, I don't know, when you taught us design terms, you mentioned something called display type. I think the kind of design that fills up the entire page. This looks a bit like it as well.
Yeah, true. They actually have, they have display type very obviously, and you can tell from like the second one, right? And even in all the other ones, in the way, in the size of the text, right? And the amount of text compared to the amount of illustrations, right? Except this, of course, but like the other two, that's very discernible. Thank you. Any other one?
I think, well, I have a point, but I think it's common to all of them.
Okay.
They didn't make use of white space here.
Sweet. Very, very obvious.
Yeah.
That's very nice. Thank you. Very, very clearly, you can see there's literally no space for almost any other thing. They covered almost everywhere with text, and there's some form of irregularity. Actually, I mean, you would not expect to have this here if you follow the design principles that I gave you, and hierarchy, and don't go out of the pink line and all of that. This will look very weird, right? But it's a design style that existed, and I mean, people still design with this style in mind. So remember. Well, not remember, I don't think I mentioned it before, but in design and with almost every other field, right? They say things like you learn the rules and then you break them, right? So things that you are seeing here obviously look like breaking the rules in some sense, right? But I feel like that's a conversation for another day, right? But for now, I just want you to watch and see how people actually do make design, or how people did make design previously, and how different it is from what we have now, and how we also still draw inspiration from some of these styles into the things that we have today. So you can see eclectic style. Eclectic means like duplicative. Okay, and there's some features. They featured using new technology. So obviously you can see the stencil style, right? For this font, it doesn't look hand drawn. It's more stencil style, right? And cubist influences, right? Now, if you don't know about cubism is, it sounds, from the name you can imply what cubism means. So the design movement had a lot of cubic shapes. So you would obviously see no curves at all, right? Except here we can see curves, of course, but there's still some influence of cubism in the movements. All right, and then all right, so let's move on to Swiss stroke international style. All right, and in particular, the use of grids and asymmetrical layouts alongside sans serif typography, okay, were amongst the most prominent stylistic developments of this style. So tell me very easily some of the things that you can observe.
I can observe the use of largely monochromatic colors. And observe the use, like there's a lot of space as well, and the body copy is not everywhere. It's just in a particular space. Then there's I think, some symmetry. Yeah.
Very true. So the only thing that might not have been very accurate is symmetry, right? So asymmetrical, more like asymmetrical. But apart from that, everything you said is very accurate. Also, you can even see here that typically there will be two styles, two types of headings. So instead of display fonts like we had in Futurism, right? We're seeing maybe in a modern day language, we'll say something like maybe a header and then body copy, header and body copy instead of header, subheader, body copy, you know, those type of things, right? Now, more asymmetrical, right? Or asymmetrical as opposed to symmetrical. Symmetrical, if the forms are more symmetrical, they would have the exact same thing on the left and on the right, right? But here, if you divide the sheet into two, right, in any way, you would see that they are not exactly the same, all right? Even this, like, maybe what you're referring to is the concentricity of the circle, right? Which is a form of symmetry, actually, right? But in the mainstream use of the word symmetry, the style is more asymmetrical, right? But the circles here are very concentric in the sense that they are not irregular. They come from one point and they keep expanding, all right? So we can see the very, very consistent use of negative space or white space, right? Saturated matte color palettes, very clean and simple. You can see not one serif font at all, right? And very asymmetrical layouts, all right? Any other person wants to point out something that I wasn't able to mention?
I would say that everything seems to be in its place, and they make use of hierarchy in text. And I can
Very,
also see the rule of thirds come into play.
very delicious, actually. You can see the rule of thirds very, very nicely in the way they place their fonts, right? They hardly place their fonts right in the middle. They usually place it on one side of the sheet, which is really true. And then, what was the first thing you said? It skipped my mind. Hierarchy, very, very sweet. Hierarchy. Compared to here, you see, like they really, really played around with hierarchy and just it's like they were doing anyhow. All right. But here we can see the use of hierarchy in the way that I explained it. Okay. Next, we have postmodernism, right? And this mixed up style is characterized by a tilted axis. Okay. A tilted axis is like typically if you have symmetry. So let me explain a tilted axis in case you might be lost by that word. For example, let's say we have a form, okay? We have a form like a rectangle, all right? Now, the axis that we have here is the X and Y axis or vertical and horizontal axis, all right? So you can tell that it's placed properly. Now, if you want to change the axis or tilt the axis, it means we'll be rotating it, all right? So this is one of the most prominent features of postmodern style. They hardly kept anything in its regular horizontal and vertical axis. All right. So if you didn't understand what was meant by axis, this is basic explanation of what it means. All right. So illustrations, overlying figures, impulsive decoration. So the style has been used in varying degrees since its first uses. And if it's used correctly, you can give your project a unique expression. All right. So speak to me. What's something that you can easily see from here that's different from some of the ones that we have seen before?
I can see like the use of high contrast because of the plenty they want you to really see. And like it says in your slide, there are lots of overlapping elements as well.
Very nice. Very nice. Perfect. Any other person?
I think they played with colors a lot. So they used
Yeah.
complementary colors, supplementary colors, and other things. They're going across the color wheel quite a lot.
Sweet, sweet. Very true. All right. Any other person? All right. So from our next slides, I want everyone to pay attention. I'm going to be calling names. All right. Because only Adebora and Comfort have been speaking. All right. So if you haven't been paying attention, I want you to pay attention at this point. All right. So you can see a lot of collage type designs, like they brought the R from somewhere, brought the O from somewhere else, brought the J from somewhere else, brought, those type of things, and then overlapping elements, right? And it looks very impulsive and playful, actually. And then the tilted axis, like I said, is one of the most prominent features of the postmodern style. All right. Next, we have psychedelic. All right. Now, what can you see and tell us some of the very, very obvious differences between this style from any of the previous styles that we've seen, or just a character? I'm going to call Victoria.
I really have no idea. It just seems very odd.
True, it does seem odd. So now that's what I want you to bring out. What makes it seem odd compared to the previous ones that we've seen before? When you think about it like that, you'll be able to articulate the thing that is in your mind that you cannot exactly say. But you're in the right direction when you say that it seems very odd. So if you contrast it to the things that we've seen before, what about this makes it look odd compared to the ones that we've seen before?
Okay, I'm just saying that they made use of the border on the pages.
Uh-huh.
Very okay. So the fonts used are very strange.
Very
I'm
good.
not sure if it's English, actually.
Yeah. Okay, that's cool. Thank you. I like that, actually. So we see the use of bright and clashing colors, very illegible, drawn, curvative type, abstract curvilinear shapes, and metaphysical, also illustrative or photographic subject matter. So obviously you see that this was probably an image that they edited, and you can see the what do they call it? It's kind of like a monochrome, not a monochrome, almost like a duotone, right? A duotone from pink to like magenta, right? For the images. And you can see the same thing here. Like it's kind of like duotone images. Duotone is when you, instead of white and black, you have, instead of having like an image in white and black, you would have it in maybe pink and black or white and blue. Almost like a monochromatic type of design, but except in this case, you have only two colors, right? So it's called a duotone because you're using two tones, okay? So yeah, that's what you have here, right? In the way that the images have been treated. All right. And this style was heavily influenced by psychedelic drug culture. So if you know about that, you might relate. If you don't, you can go online and find out about it. So we have very intense and clashing colors, right? And the type and image used here is very influenced by the Art Nouveau style. All right, so we see hand-drawn type, very illegible, and then abstracted curvaceous forms and design elements. So it's very true, all the things that you said. So those are the things that make you look very odd. All right. Punk. Now, the runners of this form came from the culture in which it originated in late 1970s punk music movement. Okay, so iconic elements of the punk design style are the DIY handwritten or cut and paste typographic elements. So you can easily see that here, right? So tell me some other things that you can see. Vanessa. Hi, Vanessa, are you there? Okay. Ihilesen.
Sorry, please. Your voice is breaking. I can't hear anything.
Okay, can you hear me now? Hello?
Yes,
Hello.
I'm here.
Okay, so Vanessa is here. I was saying, I want you to point out some of the things that are characteristic of this style compared to the previous ones that we've seen, or just particularly different about this one.
I see that they don't use positional hierarchy.
Yeah,
It does look very raw,
yeah,
like those amongst other things. The low quality images.
mm-hmm.
It's kind of, I don't know if you would say it's monochromatic, but I only see one color being
Yeah.
used.
Okay, thank you very much. Very, very good. And just like you said, it's monochromatic actually. Here, monochromatic is two colors, usually from, well, not two colors, usually from white to another color, right? And it's different from duotone in the sense that duotone is usually, well, so this is some form of duotone, right? Because you have two colors fading out into each other. But in this case, right, we can use monochromatic. You can use them interchangeably depending on the situation, right? But here we can see that the images are actually in duotone. They look very, very low quality, right? Grain and mask screen effects, printing effect, like it's on the screen. And you see, they also have a style that is synonymous with the arts, modern, postmodernist style, where we have a lot of collage type, right? And predominantly they use a lot of photographic images, right? High contrast, bold colors, overall rough textured aesthetics. All right. So it looks very, very unrefined in the way that the texts are, in the way that it just feels like in Nigeria was jaga jaga, right? So that's characteristic of this style. Okay. And I mean, if you want to design something that is punk related or punk influenced, of course you have to use some of the pointers that we've derived from this style. All right. Now, grunge. So here we can see uneven lines, crooked elements, dirty stains, badly handwritten text, and very grainy or torn photographs. They all play their part in conveying the tone of grunge style. All right. So you can see the texture, right? They use a lot of texture, right? Compared to any other style, right? And the textures are very, very, very dirty in many cases, or they look very dirty, right? And you can see dirt stains like coffee stains, rings, spilled out liquids, torn images, paper edges, handwritten and hand-drawn elements. Those type of things are characteristic of the grunge style. All right. Minimalist and flat. And obviously, this is what is very popular in our modern design style. All right, Ihilesen, I want you to go on this. Let me know some of the things that are very characteristic of this style and things that make it different from the previous styles that we've seen. Ihilesen, are you there? All right, I'll just proceed, right? So very easily you'd see there's no depth of field, right? It's just flat, basically. There's no depth of field is something where you can tell that the elements in the design are clashing on each other. So for example, let me show you what the depth of field will look like in terms of this design, right? So here we can tell that this is overlapping on top of this, right? And there's that sense of this is above this, right? But here we don't have all of those in the sense that we have it here, in the sense that this is one element and then this is another element. I mean, here we have text on top of this, but it's flat on top of it. So you don't have things like shadow on the text, right? To give it any special effect. I mean, we have a shadow on the border, right? And the shadow, of course, is making it obvious that the rectangle is flat on the floor, okay? But we also see we have a lot of neutral tones, secondary colors, right? Linear design, use of negative space, a lot of use of negative space, okay? So the ongoing popularity of this style is very palpable. It's utilized in every sphere design is found, from branding to packaging to editorial, infographics, and digital design, all right? Lastly, we have three-dimensional, right? And the simple inclusion of a drop shadow and some design tweaks can move a completely fanciful product design from a flat lifeless digital image to a more believable lifelike object. All right. So imagine this element without a shadow, right? It will look just like the flat style design. Okay. So we can see the illusion of lifelike depth and volume. All right. They employ a lot of various lighting effects and shadow and depth, which is usually utilized when you have one color, right? Sometimes when you don't have one color, you don't see them use a lot of that. Okay. Now, I've explained design movements, all right? And I'm going to go over to design styles. Now, I'm going to explain the difference to you as we move on, all right? So you can design in an abstract format with, you can design in abstract format with minimalist. You can design abstract format with 3D. You can design in abstract format with postmodernist style. You can design in abstract with, this has a lot of grunge effects. You can also design in abstract format with, this is still somewhere in the middle of 3D and minimalist, all right? Do you understand the difference between the design styles and the design movements? The movements are characteristic elements or modes of design in a way that they design in a particular style, right? But abstracts and all these kind of things are more in terms of not necessarily related to a particular movement, but it's more like a philosophy or like an overarching style or ideology. Okay, let me know if you understand the differences between the design styles and design movements based on how I'm just explaining it now. Or if it's confusing, let me know. If it's not confusing, we can just move on. All right, so it's not confusing then. Okay, so let me finish up this right now. Like I said, the way this is going to make sense for you is when you actually do want to find abstract elements. If you come here and you type abstract, right? You find elements that are abstracted, right? And abstract things mean that it doesn't necessarily have like some form of meaning. It's more broad in terms of somebody can use one abstract figure to say 7 different things, right? So these are the nature of things that are abstract in shape, all right? So they are not defined particularly, okay? So when you're looking for abstract elements, or when you're looking for elements that are, this type of things, you know what you're looking for. I'm looking for an abstract background, right? So you know what to look for, okay? Conceptual. Oh, I duplicated that. Sorry. Conceptual art, right? Now, it's a subcategory of illustration and it's a metaphorical description of a visual idea. So just like, I didn't explain abstract very well. So let me go back and explain it very well, right? Abstract is a style of creating a piece of art that is independent from the way it looks in the real world, okay? And an abstract design style is achieved by a combined composition of colors and shapes, usually based on the individual interpretation of the designer, the client, or both. That's why I said an abstract design can mean different things to different people. All right. So we see a lot of ambiguous representation of objects, it also invites individual interpretation. All right. So for conceptual art, I'm sure you've seen things like this online at different points. All right. They may contain some elements of reality, right? But they are usually more super emphasized, right? Fiction type, illustration type of things. All right. So it doesn't necessarily fit like the real life nature of what the object looks like. Okay. But you can tell that it's inspired from something that exists in reality. Yeah. As opposed to abstract, which can be completely different. Okay. Now, feminine, right? So the opposite of masculine design, obviously, it's usually characterized by details that stereotypically attract female attention, like soft color palettes, floral, cursive writing. They may employ cursive or fluid fonts. They may they may incorporate pastel colors, right, or shades of red, and they may feature a female's face or flowers and stuff. So when you're, I hope you know, for example, let's use the word pastel, right? You'd see that the kind of colors you get are more feminine, right? Shades of yellow, pink, you know, more typically in the bracket of warm colors, right? But not as heavy as the warm colors are, but in a brighter hue of warm colors, right? So that's characteristic of a style that is feminine, all right? Fun and playful. So it's a design style that is inspires fun and gives off an informal rather than rigid impression. Okay, and it's commonly used to create cartoons. It can be non-realistic or semi-realistic artistic style of drawing. All right, so you see obviously animated things, right? And it may contain elements of fantasy. Fantasy is similar to conceptual design, and also similar to Art Nouveau in terms of movement, like I described earlier, right? Now, geometric design, obviously derived from geometry, so it's characterized by the use of heavy straight lines. You notice that geometric design style is often used majorly in organizations, right? So corporate organizations use this a lot, tech companies use this a lot, internet-related items use this a lot. Minimalist designs are mostly geometric. Okay, so you can start to see the intersection between the styles of design and design movements themselves. All right. You can actually create, for example, like I said, you can create like a postmodernist style with geometric, a postmodernist movement style with geometric design. Okay, so obviously what you would then do is all your geometric elements are going to be, first of all, on a tilted axis, 1, 2, you'd start to overlap your elements to achieve the style of a postmodernist style. All right, so that's one of the differences, or that's the major difference between the styles themselves and the design movements. All right, grunge, right? Now grunge is both a movement and a style, so it's sometimes considered a subcategory of the vintage style, and it evokes darker, gritty, cool side of the 1990s. It's typically characterized by distress, rough, or torn appearances to its design. So imagine that I'm trying to find something, maybe I want a background that is dirty, right? I know that I want to find something that is grunge, right? So when you search for grunge in your element section, for example, right, you would obviously start to see all the elements that I've been describing, okay, with their characteristics, all right, in terms of elements, in terms of images, in terms of mode of arrangement, you know, those kind of things. So if you loaded, or while it's loading here, so you can see the backgrounds, rough, dirty, you can see the texture, those type of things. Because of time, I want us to move on, all right? Illustrated, right, is derived from interpretation or visual explanation of a text, concept, or a process. So you see a lot of hand-drawn, raw style type of things, and they look dependent on the designer's drawing style. All right, now I'm explaining all of this because, I mean, it's not like we can create an illustrated style on Canva. Yes, we can. It's going to take a long time, but it's possible. But typically, this is just to help you know when you're looking for something that has an illustrated type style of elements. All right, so if you go to your element section and type illustration, you'd see illustrated type of elements. All right, luxurious. Now, luxurious design style evokes an idea of indulging in extra comfort or pleasures additional to the necessary standard of well-being. So you see the use of rich colors like gold help to achieve this idea of luxury. All right, and they also use black, gold, bronze. Metallic colors actually helps give off this vibe. All right, and there's also a lot of minimalism sometimes. Most times you're either on the minimalist end or you're on the, you know, Victorian Art Nouveau style of design with luxurious designs. You most likely not see any Art Deco style in luxurious design, or, you know, any other of the previous style, or like American kitsch, right? It doesn't evoke any form of luxury. Okay. Masculine, which is obviously the opposite of feminine. So you see these types of design are stereotypically appealing to men. You see details in masculine design may include simple lines, monochromatic theme, black and white, rugged texture, right? And they may incorporate a lot of gritty, dark, dull colors, like I said earlier. More warm colors are in the direction of the feminine design, while more dull colors are in the direction of male. That's why you won't go to a barbing salon and expect to see all manner of yellows and reds and greens, and it's because those are dull colors or dark colors are the colors that appeal to more males, right? Another thing that you would see that is very similar to masculine design is grunge, right? Many male masculine design style things are grunge related. Now, organic and natural. So this is a style that takes the flowing natural forms of reality and is characterized by continuous lines and dynamic curves. Okay, so organic style can feel rustic by adding weathered and texturized effects. Okay, so generally incorporates natural elements like leaves, flowers, fresh produce. We can be combined with illustrated look for just to give it the high effect of raw organic things. I mean, organic and natural things are inspired by organic items that exist in reality, like flowers, plants, produce, those kind of things. So you see a lot of green as well, right? Because a lot of brown, and if you're finding any other colors, or maybe the color of fruits, and stuff like that. All right. Photorealism, right? It's a form of illustration where the designer closely matches it to the original image or photo as much as possible. All right, so this is very different. It can be illustrated, but the illustration is going to be very realistic as opposed to abstract or conceptual or stylized in any form of way. The goal of this kind of photorealism is to make sure that it looks as real as possible. All right, so yeah, that's as much as needs to be said about that, right? Professional or corporate. So you see a lot of geometric forms, like I said earlier, right? And it's characterized by, muted colors, minimalist details to represent conservative ideas. So you see they employ a lot of classic fonts, types, incorporate simple shapes and objects. They may evoke formal impressions with use of negative space and line art, all right? Typographic style of design obviously has a lot of text. All right. Obviously you see use a lot of display type here, where the font style is generally the focus of the design. The typographic design may incorporate objects, but text usually conveys the main message. Okay. So, you can see the outline here. You can see the image of a lion, but you can see that the text is doing all of the work. All right. Vintage or retro, very similar to some of the previous styles we've seen. Now you can start to see some of those elements apply here, even though these designs are modern, but you can see the infusion of Art Nouveau in terms of the kind of backgrounds and colors. You can see art and crafts in terms of art and crafts and Victorian in terms of the way the fonts are written and all these elements. Okay, so 19th century style designs that are incorporated into modern design. All right, so this is the end of design styles. Let me know if you have any questions. Let me know if you have any things that are not clear. I'm happy to go over them as quickly as possible. Anybody? Nobody. All right. So my other presentation for typography, I'm going to go over them before we start our class on Monday. All right. But like I promised, I'm going to go over some of the assignments, and I would go over some of the assignments. I will make corrections, make comments, and hopefully everyone can learn from some of the things that are there. Let me know if you have any questions at this point, or if you think it's a better idea for me to go over my typography slides before next class. Well, it's actually past 10, so I actually don't want to use up that much time. Okay, so I'm going to open up some of the assignments now, and I want you to pay attention because I'll make comments to most of them. All right. Hold on, they're opening. Okay, so I might not be able to go through everyone, but if you want me to go over your assignments in public like this, feel free to reach out to me so I can go over it in the next class if I'm not able to cover yours in today's class. All right. So let us begin. I'm going to share my screen now so everyone can watch and learn. All right. Let me know if you can see my screen now. Great. All right. So this is actually perfect. I don't have any comments to make. This is literally perfect. Very, very well done. Very well done, actually. Well done. Well done, well done, well done. Well done, actually. Yeah. I don't have any comments to make. This is perfect. You found all the elements and even designed the logo. Really good. Well done. All right. This is another one. This is very well done, actually. You see, something that I want to point out that you will start to observe. Remember, I taught you about kerning, right? You can do something similar when it comes to your fonts. For example, when you look at this, you can tell that it feels like there's more space between launching and soon compared to where launching, right? So you want to reduce the line spacing just for that one. So it looks closer, all right? And then you reduce this just a little as well. Okay. Let me increase that particular line because I think I overdid it. Okay. So this, in this case, you're actually using your eyes to judge optically. Yeah, well, yeah, optically. You're judging optically. Okay. So yeah, this is perfect. I like the confetti, not the exact one, but it works perfectly because it's the literal same style. Okay. Oh yeah, so I'm sure this person couldn't find the background. So how do you find that background? It's pretty simple. Search for confetti and you'll find it. And then this, now another thing that I remember I taught you about, first you have to ungroup this, or is it grouped? What's this? Okay, this is not doing anything, right? So when what's happening? Okay, when I'm going over typography, I'm going to make some comments to this. So you start to look, this is not properly ragged. That's the word, ragged. All right. When you see something like this, you want to ensure that your font is organized, right? So, and then if you look closely, you see that this is too close to the edge compared to the one that I did earlier, right? So bring this too closer and then bring this down a little. So you see like you have very, very nice space around and then around this as well, okay? And then there's a change of color. When you're working with a logo, try your very best possible not to change the color at all right? I'll let you know when you should change the color when you're working with a design, right? But try your best not to change the color, especially here in this case where there's no need to change it because it's on a white background, right? And all the colors will show, okay? Now this is well done, except of course, this person forgot to expand the image to give it the effects that we were trying to give it, all right? And then the scale of the logo looks smaller compared to what I think I designed. All right, but yeah, this is good. Well done. And then yeah, this is also good. The only other difference is the fact that what I did was a perfect square. If you watched closely, right? So what that means is you might want to work with the rectangle, guiding rectangle, and then just move these elements up and down, right? To get perfect thing that I designed earlier. All right. So whoever this is, well done. So this person shared as a template. So that's one of the things that I ensured to let you know about. When you are sending your design, you come to share, right? Please don't forget, you come to share and you click on edit instead of view as a template. So that's what this person did. Ensure that it's selected to share a link to edit instead of view as a template. All right. Share a link to edit, copy link. This is what I need. All right. So here now I have to open up this design in my Canva as well. All right. I specifically sent the fonts that was used, so I'm surprised that this wasn't used. But I like your attempt to create some confetti effects. All right. So well done. But the thing to do is search for confetti and you'll find it. So we found this, which is really cool. Really good attempt. Nice as well. So another thing that you'll notice is it feels like there is not as much space in terms of white space compared to the one that I did earlier. So you want to reduce the size of this, all right, so that it's not clustering your design, all right. And then here you want to reduce the size of this font. So it's not too, so you have good enough white space, all right. So it's not too clustered, okay. All right. Nice. Well, I didn't use a perfect circle. So what you want to do is come to elements and search for frame. Okay. Now in frames, you don't use a perfect circle. You use, there's a shape that looks like a circle. It's an organic shape if you want to use more technical terms like I described already, right? It's an organic shape that I used and you find it under shapes. And I like how you positioned it, very similar to the way I did, except it wasn't a perfect circle, all right? And then here, very similar, I like the twists, but I wanted you to do a direct replication, all right? So this would be a square and then you rotate this back to the way it was supposed to be. All right, so but well done. So don't forget, once you come to share, right, you click on select a link to edit, right, as opposed to share to view or templates. All right. So this is a video link. Okay, so I made comments on this already. Perfectly done. The only other thing is spacing, right? So, but yeah, right. Just the spacing is the issue here. Okay. Oh, I see. This person literally replicated this. Wow, that's some hard work. Well done. I mean, but there was a shortcut, so but well done, actually. This is good. This is a good attempt at replicating, right? And sometimes, I mean, this is a good training because you learn that you can, try to replicate some things that you don't have. I mean, maybe for those who don't use Pro Elements, for example, so you want to have a pro element, you can just duplicate the features of that element in your design instead of paying, right? But you might as well pay if you feel like you want to make more money off it. All right. So the first problem with this is if you notice this shape looks very skewed compared to the shape that I used earlier, and then there's not enough white space. All right. So what you want to do is delete, right? Enlarge. One rectangle can do the job. Okay. And then expand this as well. All right. And then instead of this ellipse, it should be a perfect circle. All right. So how do you know it's a perfect circle? You can just look at the dimension here. So it's showing 675 and 668. So I want to make sure that they are both 657 and 657. That's how you know it's a perfect circle. All right. So now you drag this, ensure that the middle is right at the top of the rectangle. Okay. And then you increase geometrically. Okay. And then now you drag this to the middle. Okay. So it's too far up, so I want to bring this down. All right. So now I'm going to have to adjust the rectangle under to be at the exact center of the circle. All right, and then we have the shape that is desired. So what you want to do is now position center, okay, and then everything is center aligned, except now I can see there's a small edge here that isn't perfect. So I'm just going to adjust it a little. Okay, I'll adjust the circle. Okay, so I'm just going to move it up. Perfect. All right. So now it's very seamless. Okay, and then what you want to do is just drag this, okay, to the center, reduce the size so it's not competing. If you notice here, this isn't the font that we were supposed to use. It's Quicksand. I thought I mentioned that I sent a voice note explaining what font this was. All right. So, well, if you change the font and then you give it increase the line spacing, text spacing, sorry, letter spacing, sorry. Okay. So it looks exactly like what I designed. All right. And then you bring this to get to the edge. Okay. And then drag this down. Another thing is the background I used here wasn't a plain color brown. So it was textured. Now you can see that it's not centralized. All right. So I'm just going to select everything. Okay. And then drag it into the middle. Now it's centralized. All right. This is not centralized. So now it's centralized. Okay. So what you want to do is go to elements and just type brown. All right. Like I said that in the voice note. So once you search brown, you can check under photos. You probably find a brown image or a brown texture or any other thing that's brown that's similar to something that I designed. All right. Here, this is almost perfect, except to use the plain image instead of an actual background, right? And then the shape is not a circle, it's an organic shape. All right. And then here, if you look closely, you'd see that there's no space between on the left and right? So you want to watch out for that. So you either expand this. If you expand this, you see it starts to cut, right? So what you want to do is make it bigger, okay? Or you make the text smaller so that we have space on the left and on the right, all right? Instead of having your text literally on the edge, okay? So you can just bring it in a little so that it's not too, it's not touching the edge of your shape, okay? And then background, just add a textured background, all right? And this will be perfect, okay? Pretty much. All right, well done. Everyone did really well. That's good. So here, like I said earlier, what you want to do for the color, okay, I have many things to say here. What you want to do for the color, first of all, is if you find a design that you don't know what was used, simply take a screenshot, all right, and then import the image, okay? And then the colors will appear. I remember I've shown you how to do that already. So like I said, something similar to the previous one. What you want to do is just reduce the line spacing and font is fine. Here, the confetti is a little different because if you notice in what that I did, the background wasn't disturbed. And that's because I did not want the text to be disturbed in any way. I wanted the text to have its own particular color, all right? And I'm wondering why art is a separate color, and then the share culture is a different color. So you should have a uniform color here, all right? And then you want to make this font a little smaller because it's starting to compete with culture here, right? And then the positioning, I can see that it's centralized, right? But it's not, well, it's not even perfectly centralized. So what you want to do is come here, center, okay? And then reduce the size of this, okay? So that they flush, all right? So that it flushes, okay? And then here you want to reduce the size of this so it's not competing with this, okay? And then this is not very appropriate, right? So what you want to do is just search for brush, under templates, brush, okay? Graphic, you'll find a brush that you can use, and then, yeah, so you can change the color of the brush. If you use this brush, for example, you can change the color to whatever color it was supposed to be, okay? Same thing, similar issue here with the one that I designed earlier. The circle here is perfect. No, it's not perfect. So it should be a perfect circle. And the circle should flush with the rectangle directly in the middle. That's the only way you get a perfect semicircle like that. All right. So I don't want to go over this again because I've gone over it already. All right. And oh no, it shouldn't be a rectangle. It should be a circle at the very least. All right. But I specifically used a geometric shape, an organic shape. All right. And then here, all right, I like the texture you use, which is different from mine, but it works. What you can see here that isn't working well is the positioning. All right. So you can see the positioning of the text compared to the tip. Okay. So it's not centralized. It should be. So first, what you can even do is select all your elements, position, and then center. Right. It's going to solve half of your problems. And then if you notice, the design that I did was a perfect square. All right. So however you want to adjust this image, feel free to adjust it the way you want. All right. And then you want to centralize this with the rectangle as well. Okay. So your alignment is very important. I noticed a lot of alignment issues with most of the designs. All right. So please ensure that you are conscious about that. Also, if you look here, you see the scale. You notice that my design this area was closer to the edge. I remember showing you how to duplicate a design. So I expected everyone to at least try to use that. All right. So take a screenshot of the design, bring it onto your page, make it transparent, and then design on top of it so you can get the exact thing. All right. All right. So yeah, I'm done with this. Okay. Perfect. Very, very well done. Very, very well done. I think the line spacing is a lot, so it can be reduced. Perfect and perfect. All right. Thank you very much. Well done. Here, oh, this person actually tried to do the exact same thing. And I like the fact that you used the gradients. Really nice. Well done. Very well done. So you couldn't find the exact thing, but you improvised. Very, very well done. So yeah, the color here is an issue. This is the color that I used. So like I said earlier, when you're working with a brand, you want to ensure that you stick to the colors that were used when the designer was designing, or because a brand represents themselves with a particular color, you want to ensure that you don't invent the wheel in terms of using colors. Stick to the colors that they have prescribed. All right. Here also, I can see that this shape is disproportionately longer compared to the one that I designed earlier, that I designed in my design. All right. So, and I like what you did here actually. You cut this already, right? So what you want to do is reduce this height, right? And then bring this down a bit. So we have good enough space around something that's similar, right? And then position, okay, centralize already. And then bring this in, okay? And then the space here seems like a lot, okay? So you can increase the size just to make it look more uniform. All right. Don't forget, I taught you how to, and I see this color isn't exactly white. Is it? Okay. Yeah, it is. So another thing that you'll notice is in design that I did, it wasn't perfectly white. There was an opacity, right? I mean, it was really, really low. It was like 95, right? Or 90, right? So you could see the background just a little, but it wasn't plain white. Okay, so that's something, another extra detail that could have been noticed. Very well done. Very well done, right? Like I said earlier, always stick to the exact color, okay? We saw that's also an issue here. All right, so yeah, I think I'm done. Feel free to reach out to me if there's any other thing that you might be having issues with personally, okay? So this will be the end of this class for today. Thank you everyone for joining. I will see you on Monday, and I'll send the assignment for the week tonight and then upload the video as well. Do I have any questions before we go? No questions. All right. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you for joining class today. Bye. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
You're welcome.